answers to all your burning questions. Whether you're looking for relationship advice or curious about the art of intimacy, Roma's got you covered. Pleasure Pulse, every Tuesday night from 8 to 9 p.m. Only on ZIZ Radio 96.1 FM. Don't miss out. Your sex education journey starts this Tuesday with Roma as your guide.
To, I think, maybe a special episode of Pleasure Pulse where you are hearing me but you're not seeing me, and that's cool. That's part of the mystery of tonight's show. It is another Tuesday night and you're joined by your host Roma Richardson, and you're listening to Pleasure Pulse on ZIZ Radio, and we are also streaming tonight. You might be wondering what's going on with the video. As I mentioned, that's part of the mystery of today's show. We have a guest here. And we'd prefer to keep the conversation as intimate as possible. So only I can see my guest tonight, but you will hear the guest. And tonight we're talking about, and I'm sure you've seen the poster, we'll be talking about open relationships. But as usual, before we get into tonight's show, I'm going to take a few minutes, give you all a break to gather the troops, let everybody know that Pleasure Pulse is live, and then we will be right back.
This message is for every business owner in St. Kitts and Nevis. Jumpstart your business and set yourself apart from your competitors with an advertising solution from ZIZ Radio, ZIZ Television, or Big Wave. The Advertising Solutions Department at ZIZ prides itself on providing client-focused advertising solutions that make sense for all local businesses. Don't use the excuse that you can't afford to advertise. Call us at 465-2621. We will sit with you, discover your needs, and design a solution that fits your budget. Advertising works, and with ZIZ, it works even better for your business.
Throw the Caribbean, we boast a diverse abundance of flora and fauna that adorn our countries. This diversity follows through to our people, communities, and families.
As a doctor, I treat my patients with respect and understanding, without stigma or discrimination, no matter their sexual orientation, practice, or belief. Remember, everybody deserves a fair treatment.
As a mother and healthcare professional, I believe all Caribbean children should be safe, happy, and healthy. Let us create a safe, supportive environment for all Caribbean children to thrive.
Let us treat our LGBTQ+ family members with love and respect. Strong families create a stronger Caribbean. This message is brought to you by the Eastern Caribbean Alliance for Diversity and Equality, EK.
Welcome back. You're listening to Pleasure Pulse on ZIZ Radio, on ZIZ on Facebook, and on YouTube. And I'm so happy that you have joined me for another Tuesday night of Pleasure Pulse. Tonight we're talking about open relationships. And I think everybody knows that we live in a very small space geographically, as well as psychologically, mentally. It's like romantically, it's even a very small space, and sometimes we have to deal with the issues of living in a small society. So that might mean one thing that immediately comes to mind: people minding your business, everybody in everybody's business, people not being able to live their truths as openly and as freely as they would like to. So a lot of times people are forced to live their lives in secret, and that's not necessarily what's happening in this conversation. But I think part of why we don't have more people talking publicly about different kinds of relationships that they're in, about their sexual orientation, about their gender identity, and so on, is the fear of what will happen when people know. So we're talking about acceptance, tolerance, support, encouragement for people to live life fully. So tonight we're talking about open relationships, and it's something that I've been wanting to talk about for a while, and I'm so grateful that my guest accepted the invitation to come on, because it's hard to find someone who is in an open relationship who is comfortable to speak openly about that relationship. So welcome to my guest here tonight. It's good to have you, and I'm looking forward to getting into tonight's conversation. So tonight we're talking about open relationships, and open relationships, or an open relationship, is defined as having more than one romantic or sexual partner at a time. I think before we started the show, you were telling me you kind of see it slightly differently. Can you tell me more about that?
For sure. First of all, thank you for having me. Open relationships generally stem in two different categories. You have your polyamorous side, which is more relationships, heavy involvement in a lot of emotions. And then you just have your open side, people that just want to get together for more physical and sexual interactions.
Yeah, and that's more casual as well. And whereas with polyamory, you might establish multiple relationships. With open, quote-unquote relationships, it might be a lot more casual and more one-off.
Just to give you a few examples, so you could have a clear definition of both. Polyamorous relationships will look more like triads, living partners, whereas open relationships would more look like swingers, quick dating, online dating, that kind of stuff, one-night stands. So they're very different.
Yeah.
Very different. And also you could have a hybrid version of both. You can have a hybrid version of both in your relationship. It's just a matter of what works best for you.
Yeah, okay. And I guess the people that you find as well who are not, in that main relationship. Okay. So you are in yeah, tell us about the kind of relationship that you're in and just like walk us through, because I'm sure I wish I had, sent out a survey to see, like, understand people's familiarity with open relationships, right? Because, like, the small society that we live in also means, like, that we have certain things that we accept as normal and certain types of relationships that we view as ideal and acceptable. So normally we see, like, regular consensual monogamous relationships. People get married to one person and you're in a relationship with one person, even though we do know that we have a lot of
cheaters,
non-consensual multiple partner relationships where, like, you ain't agree to it, but your partner going out there and still having sex and relationships with other people. So talk to us about the kind of relationship that you're in.
It's a good question. Now, when I like to talk about the type of relationship you're in, you gotta understand where your current relationship is based on where your reality in terms of your lifestyle is. Now, we just had family events that forced us to push us back into a monogamish space, because we wanted to focus back on the family. But in our regular lives, our open relationship stems more from, we have two different styles, I would say. Now, on one side, you have the person that's seeking for that intimacy, seeking for that longer term relationship, meeting new people, having fun, and then you have the person on the other side that is perfectly fine with what's happening at home and just wants to have a sexual interaction or a sexual relationship with some other person. So when you put those two things together, that's one side of the relationship and the other side of the relationship. Now, of course, it comes with a lot of challenges. It comes with a lot of challenges. First of all, communication. Communication is of the utmost importance. Utmost importance in understanding what your relationship is, because you have to be able to communicate when you feel changes in your relationship. You have to be able to communicate how you feel. So, for instance, us being in an open space, we had a family event, and then we had to communicate to move back in a monogamish space. No, we're not saying we're going to stay in a monogamish space for longer, but it's something in the tool belt that if people realize that, hey, monogamy is a tool that you could use for time being.
Yeah.
If it fits you, then do it. We're not discounting monogamy at all. It is a a relationship that you could use in your tool belt. No, do we prescribe to only that? No. No, we do not prescribe to only that. So our relationship is currently, I don't want to use the word closed, because it's still free in the sense where, for instance, they can hang out with people. You can hang out with your friends, you go out, have a good time. But it's currently closed due to family events. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's really interesting that you bring in that you can, shift to a more monogamish type of relationship if you want, because I think sometimes people think that open relationships are like a free-for-all and you just open forever and you're just you're just moving up and down the place, and it's about things like that. So I appreciate that you say, like, as the relationship evolves and changes, and as you both change and your needs change, you communicate that, and then you shift into something that works, and then you can shift back out if you feel comfortable.
Earlier you mentioned about people that are in non-consensual non-monogamy, in terms of they having partners that are seeing other people without their consent.
AKA cheating. AKA cheating, yeah.
Yes, AKA cheating. And we would like to think that that's not common. It is very, very, very common, especially in our society today. We joke about it all the time, that we'd have probably been able to score more if we just act like we were cheating with these people. But then it's a very thin line between being ethical and being unethical. I don't want to put myself in an unethical position just because somebody else is not comfortable with my lifestyle. I don't want to approach it in a certain manner. No, if I'm not comfortable with it, then it generally won't happen in that sense. But you have to be aware of I guess you could say, the evolution of your own relationship and where you are. You gotta pay attention to realize that, hey, if you think your partner is cheating on you, that person is not. Like, I mean, there are some home records out there. Don't get me wrong.
I was watching videos from the party over the weekend, and the DJ was like, if you are having sex with somebody's boyfriend, put your hand. And these two girls were in the front with their hands up, and I was like, all right, and so perfect things. Because sometimes too, like, you know, the people in the actual relationship are fully aware of, you know, the cheating and so on that's happening, and it's kind of I don't want to go into like the degree to which it's accepted or anyways, but
so when you have these kind of incidents, I personally think is one, a lack of knowledge in our culture and our community about relationships and like sexual behavior, and two, I don't want to say a non-willingness, but there's just not enough information for people to have to understand that, hey, there are different options.
Yes.
If I'm in a relationship with my partner and I'm a cheater, I'm not a bad person. I'm just feeling a need. That it's not like I'm leaving my partner. It's not like I'm running off from my partner. I'm still with my partner. Yeah. But there's a need that needs to be filled. And this could go both female and for males. The best way to finding out, for instance, if your partner cheats on you, there's a whole bunch of emotions that comes with it. That's understandable. Like you've been hit with a brick. What do you call it? Blindsided. You've been blindsided by something. Of course, there's a lot of emotions involved with that. But I think where a lot of relationships crumble and fail to evolve is how they treat that inflection. Where, hey, I just found out that my partner is cheating on me. No, it's easier to accept if the partner comes and tells you. Yeah. It's a lot harder to accept if you go and you find out on your own. The acceptance of it is it's a little bit more difficult. But at some point in time, you're going to have to realize that, hey, if this is a solid partner and, hey, yes, there was obviously cheating on me. Yes, maybe they came and told me. You still have to understand that that person is taking steps to be a more honest person in a relationship. Of course, you're going to feel bad. Sometimes you got to look past that. And I think that space to evolve, I would call it the space of evolvement, like that. If you could just get your mind together and evolve from that space and see the other side of this coin, I guarantee you the relationship that you have will evolve and you'll start to see things differently with your partner, even though they just cheat on you. It's a learning experience if you use it correctly.
So let me just ensure I understand. Do you think that, because I know sometimes, I was going to say just like with a baby, sometimes open relationships are like last ditch efforts, you know, to save like a baby, to save a failing relationship. So would you advise people, you know, who have discovered that cheating has happened to be like, hey, let's, or, because I also want to ensure that, you know, people hearing are also hearing correctly.
That's a good question. No. A general rule of thumb in open relationships is don't use it to fix a problem. So if there's a problem of cheating in your relationship, don't use open relationships to fix that. It's not going to work. Like, it's 100%. It's guaranteed. It's not going to work. You guys are not on the same page. It's not a solution that you want. First of all, your communication, there's a breakdown in communication somewhere because, hey, your partner cheating on you. You didn't know. So there's a breakdown in communication.
They're telling you, okay, yeah.
There's a breakdown in communication. So to go into any open relationship, the current existing relationship needs to be solid. It needs to be like top notch, A1. Like, you know, it needs to be communicating and gelling properly. No, that's if you're moving from an already monogamous relationship into an open relationship. I find some of the best relationships for the modern world into total is relationships that meet in an open space. So you see, you start
as in you start as an open relationship.
Yes, you start
okay.
as an open relationship. I think if people approach relationships when they're starting their relationship as open, and then maybe they could slide into monogamy or slide into different structures of open relationship. But I think if more relationships start from an open base, you have a lot more, less problems down the road for sure.
Okay.
A lot more.
Okay. So you have, I think you've kind of said that. I was going to ask you how you got to this stage in your relationship, but you said that, you know, part of it was like a family event. But I'm curious about how you got to the stage of being in an open relationship.
Okay. Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about that. Now, just some back of history on our relationship. We've been together for 10 years. We've been married for 5. We've been open, non-monogamous for 4. So that's a brief history of the relationship. How we got into open relationship is by cheating.
So you was talking about yourself?
Yes.
Okay. You were like, you know, asking for a friend. You were like, the friend is me.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I am that friend.
Okay.
Yes, so we got involved into open relationships via the method of trying to fix a problem. And while it worked for some time, we quickly realized that it was so much chaos at the start of it. So much chaos, so much emotions, so much things like you just wouldn't expect or understand. Like, for instance, what is okay and not okay for your partner. Like, what am I comfortable accepting you doing, and what are you comfortable accepting me doing? And that could vary, especially in a relationship. Open relationship that started with cheating. So yeah, the first year and a half of it was like rough, managing the emotions, understanding like what are certain needs and desires, and then the education comes in. You have to be willing to educate yourself. Remember, it's something new. You don't just get up and start something new without educating yourself. That's why they send you to school. Yeah. So we started educating ourselves, and at least I think 1.5 years into it, we kind of like step back. We were still in a space open, but we kind of remove ourselves from it for a little bit, just to correct the issues in the relationship, like our primary relationship, to make sure that was stable. Once we got those issues somewhat corrected, because like anything else, it's a constant.
A work in progress.
It's a constant work. It's no, hey, it's fixed, and then no, it's a constant.
Hey, I'm healed. Right.
It's a constant. You have to constantly work on yourself and constantly continue working on your relationship. Any long-term relationship that goes into like open it's work. It's not just free for all, everybody doing what they feel like, everybody all good. No, it is hard work. If you're not willing to put in that hard work and understand that at the end of that hard work, there's some sort of desire or feeling or pleasure or whatever it is that is for you. But you need to understand that being in open relationships is hard work, especially going into them after cheating. So we learned that the hard way, in a sense. We learned that the hard way. I would recommend the best time to open a relationship is when you're in a good position with your partner. When you guys happy, when you're communicating, that's the best time to bring that up, because it's obviously gonna change the mood, but it's not gonna change the mood enough for it to be, because you're in a good place already with your partner. You're already in a good place. So yeah. So that's a brief history how we got into it.
Yeah. Okay. And earlier you talked about like communication, because communication, 2 C words I always mention here on Pleasure Pulse: communication and consent.
Yes.
And you talked about communication, and I know communication is one of those key ingredients for a successful open relationship, a successful polyamorous relationship. Like, you need communication between 2 people. Imagine the communication that you need when you open beyond 2 people, right? Because that's where, you know, all of the issues breed. But don't let me speak about it. I want you to speak about it because I'm not in it. What are some of these other like key ingredients, practices, habits, behaviors that keep an open relationship successful?
Good question. Now, some of the practices that I found important, like just over my experience, is 1, communication. communication not only with your partner, but communication with yourself. You gotta be able to look yourself in the mirror and communicate with yourself. How do you feel? If you look yourself in the mirror and you can't ask yourself, how do you feel, and give an honest answer to yourself, something wrong. You're not communicating to yourself. You're not. You gotta take care of yourself. I found that during the experience, relationships develop what they call codependencies. Now, codependencies could be a negative and codependencies could be a positive. If your relationship is in a bad place, then the codependencies that you share with your partner are going to be in a negative space. You got to pay attention to your codependencies and understand how those affect your relationship. Okay? Mental blank. Excuse me.
It's okay.
No. When you look at a long-term relationship, when it comes to non-monogamy, another important ingredient is just making sure you're happy. If you get up off your bed, regardless of what your partner doing, if you get up off your bed and you don't feel happy, then you need to address that. You need to show up to be the best person you can be for what your relationship is. So, yes, there's a selfish, quote-unquote, selfish aspect to being in a non-monogamous relationship. That's really important. You got to take care of yourself. So communication, not only between your partner and yourself, but with yourself, but you have to put in that self-care. If you're not taking care of yourself, non-monogamy is not going to last, because you're not going to be mentally ready for it. You're not going to be physically ready for it, because remember, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
You might say you're okay with something, and then it happens, and then you're not okay with it at all. You have to be in a comfortable space to manage your relationship. And if how you're managing your the bad feelings that you would have is with like anger and lashing out and that kind of stuff, you're not in a good space. So first of all, you need to put yourself in a good space. So 3 things so far is that we have communication not only with your partner but with yourself, and a lot of self-care. 4, knowledge. It can't be no easier than that. Like, search the internet, buy a book, ask some question, Google something.
Go on TikTok.
Educate yourself. Go on TikTok. Go on Instagram. It's all over the place. Educate yourself. Knowledge is powerful. If you have a lot of knowledge, then there's no barrier for what you could accomplish. So knowledge is important. So those 4 things I find is highly important in relationships. And the last one is knowing exactly what you want. We have a problem with saying what we want. See it all the time. People just have a distinct problem with saying exactly what they want. They're either uncomfortable with it, they're either ashamed of rejection, they're either ashamed of what they want. They may think that, hey, that might be nasty. Why would I say that to Why would I say that to anybody? So being able to say what you want, like this, like, again, communicate what you want to somebody is highly important. That's highly important. So those 5 things.
Okay. And you talk about knowledge, and I see you have a book here. Tell us about this book and how it has helped you.
Well, this book is called The Ethical Slut by Janet W. Hardy. The first time we got introduced to the book was actually from a podcast. He was listening to a podcast, I think a non-monogamy podcast, and they said this book was really like almost like a Bible, an introductory Bible to open relationships and different sexual styles. And then we got the book and we read it. This was about that 1 and 6 month mark I'll tell you about earlier in the relationship, when we started educating ourselves. And we read it and we realized we was doing some things right, but we also was doing like a lot wrong. For sure. So after digesting the book and then starting to add some like the ideas in the book, like for instance, they talk about open relationships and monogamy, but they put a high emphasis on being ethical as a person. No, that's highly important in this world. You have to be ethical. If you don't have a strong ethical code, like personally, you're gonna seriously have a hard time in anything to do with non-monogamy. So you gotta be, A1 Christian like.
Right. Because I think, and I mean, the terms have evolved. I think so much. Probably in part to ensure that people don't think it's just a free-for-all, that it's just like careless or mindless or uncaring, sexual relationships, and that you are, as much as prioritizing your own needs, also prioritizing and valuing the needs of others, that you do it in a way that
is mutually
beneficial and all of those things. So like ethical non-monogamy, I would encourage everybody listening to Google that as a new, or add that to your list of dictionary terms. I should start to give a list of terms, and then at the end we can have a test and a giveaway. But I'm gonna take a pause here. You said something earlier, and I want to come back to it, as part of these key ingredients. You were talking about, saying that you're okay with something but not being okay with it. I want us to talk a bit more about that, but let's take a short break and then we'll come right back.
This message is for every business owner in St. Kitts and Nevis. Jumpstart your business and set yourself apart from your competitors with an advertising solution from ZIZ Radio, ZIZ Television, or Big Wave. The Advertising Solutions Department at ZIZ prides itself on providing client-focused advertising solutions that make sense for all local businesses. Don't use the excuse that you can't afford to advertise. Call us at 465-2621. We will sit with you, discover your needs, and design a solution that fits your budget. Advertising works, and with ZIZ, it works even better for your business.
Join us on ZIZ TV for Youth Lounge with Skenator, a talk show on vital topics such as tourism, entrepreneurship, education, religion, sex education, and mental health, featuring experts from St. Kitts and Nevis and the Caribbean region. Tune in live on the first and third Wednesday of every month at 8:30 p.m. on ZIZ TV.
Really? Hi, we're back and you're tuned into Pleasure Pulse with your host Roma Richardson and special nameless guest. And tonight we're talking about open relationships. Before we took a break, you were talking about some of those key practices or ingredients for a successful open relationship, and you mentioned, sometimes people say they're okay with something, but they're not. And I was curious about that because I'm sure even in open relationships you can have, communication, you can have certain agreements, but something might happen that was not part of those conversations, and maybe now you feel a way about it. How do you deal with that?
A good question. How do you deal with inflictions in a relationship? When something come up that you don't like. Now, I can tell you how we used to deal with it, and I'll tell you how we deal with it now. Okay. No. When inflections used to come up in our existing relationship, they were in an argument. Just an argument. And then another argument. And then another argument. No. When we learn to communicate with each other, when an inflection come up, it's literally like a sit down. You have to be able to sit down and properly communicate your feelings. So now we sit down and properly communicate your feelings. No, communication is not just, you say what you want and then I say something back. You're not communicating because nobody's listening. You're just saying something and I say something back. And then you say something and I say something back. Yeah. So when you learn methods of communications, for instance, I would say, hey, I would like to share how I feel. Okay? No, it is important to understand that the person that you're asking that could say yes or no based on how they feel. So it's good to give a little descriptor what you want to talk about. I want to share how I feel about this, and that. Okay, so the person knows what you're talking about. It's also important to tell them where you're at. Are you in an angry space when you're sharing, or are you in a calm space? So hey, I would like to share something about how I feel about this, and that. I am at a level 4. I am not angry. I'm just a bit elevated. Then you have to ask the person, is that okay? You have to give the person consent to listen to what you're going to spew right now. You have to be able to give them the chance to say, yes, I am willing to listen to you right now. If that person consents, person say, yes, I am willing to listen to you. Now, you usually start off and saying, but which person is communicating? Is it your animal, your ego, or your higher self? But that's important to know. You have to understand what you're talking from. If you're talking from your animal is usually the gut reaction that you get. Somebody says something to you and you're just, whatever comes from the gut, whatever comes from the gut is what comes out. The ego, if you're talking from your ego, you're more talking from a position of pride. Like, it's more so.
Who do you think you are?
Who do you think you are? It's more position of pride. No, if you're talking from your higher self, where everything is okay, like it's all okay over here. It's all okay. So when you get to communicating at your higher self, now you're really communicating because everything is okay. So how do you deal with the inflection in your relationship? Now you have that communication process in place. Hey, I would like to share my feelings about this and that. I'm currently at level 4. I'm not angry. Do you accept listening to this conversation? If you say yes, then I share how I feel. Okay? Now, the person that's listening to those feelings, after I'm done sharing my feeling, your only job is to ask me or to say, thanks for sharing how you feel. How may I support you in what you feel? That shows that you actually listen. To you're not just, I mean, you might be thinking about things you would like to say, but you remember you're committed to listening, you're committed to communicating with your partner, and your goal right now is just to listen. So whatever you're thinking about, just keep it to yourself, unless you're asked.
So you shouldn't say mean see what you would feel, so because or you shouldn't say I didn't mean it that way, or you shouldn't say why you angry about that.
Don't respond to what I said, because I'm telling you how I feel.
Talking and making noise. No? Okay.
No, nothing. It's important to understand that you're accepting this person's feelings. This person, remember I said, I want to share how I feel.
Yeah.
So you have to respect that.
Yeah, the feeling.
You have to respect the feeling. So your only response to that is thank you for sharing, how may I support you? Okay. Now, I might ask you to repeat what I said to you in my own words as an example. That's how I need you to support me. I want you to understand that you understand what I said, so just tell me back briefly in your own words what I said. My job even if you say it completely wrong, my job in that moment when I ask you for how I want this to be supported, and I tell you how I want it to be supported, and you support me in that way, whenever you finish supporting me in how I ask you to support me, my only job is to say Thank you. And that's the communication process. That's the communication process right there. So now you have both parties listening to how somebody's feel and coming up with a solution to it.
Okay, thank you.
So that's highly important when it comes to like infections. So when we started applying this method to our relationship, and not just the relationship, but just life in general. Like, bro, if you want to say something to me, just tell me. Just ask me for the space, and if I'm in the mood to say, listen to it, I listen to it, and what's not. There's going to be some times when you tell your partner no, and I have to also be okay with my partner saying, hey, no, I don't want to listen to your shit right now. I don't want to listen to it. I have to be okay with my partner doing that.
Yeah.
So in that moment, you're not only creating like respect for the relationship, but respect for each other in the sense of, hey, you're now listening to each other. You're now actually communicating.
Yeah.
You're actually talking to one another now. You're not just blurting out stuff. So I find that's a very important in terms of like dealing with inflections in the relationship, things that you may not like, because they're gonna come up.
Yes.
They're gonna come up. Another example is, let's say I was comfortable with my partner going out and interacting with someone, right? Let's say I was comfortable with that idea. The inflection came up because, it's like your partner come and say, hey, I'm gonna go hang out with somebody. I'm gonna go hang out, just hang out. And then it came back home. Even though you was already comfortable with the idea based on previous conversations, your partner having sex with this person, it then happened so sudden that it created an inflection in the sense of I mean,
and
I was
when they
comfortable.
said hang out, that's not what you had in mind,
right?
Yeah.
When you tell me you're going to hang out, again, that's a
You're not
breakdown in
thinking
communication.
You're right.
Right?
Yeah.
You're not being honest. You wasn't honest. You say we're gonna hang out, and then you went
hang out with your words, not your body.
Exactly.
Yes.
So that's an inflection. It was important to understand here that person on the other side saying that they was just going to hang out. Understand that person also did the best to try to communicate with you what they was feeling. You have to understand. You have to be able to be. And again, you have to, in order for you to see these things in the sense of a positive light, you have to be in a positive space. I have to make sure I'm in a positive space because bad news around every corner in open relationships. So you have to be able to receive it with a calm presence. Because at the end of the day, it done happen. You can't go back and remove it. It done happen. So the quicker you could get over it happening, the quicker you can move forward and actually learn from it.
Yeah.
And that's highly important. That's highly important. How you accept things you don't like. You gotta be able
work
to
through them
really settle into it. You gotta be in a really calm space to accept, hey, well, you tell me you're gonna hang out and you already had sex. What? What? You have to be in a calm, accepting presence, and in order to do that, you have to have practice. Yeah. You could talk all you want about it until you're in the situation.
Right. Yeah. Because jealousy is a thing. You could talk about what would we do if this thing happens, or how are we gonna deal with these jealous feelings or feelings of jealousy or whatever until it happens. And now you actually have to process the jealousy and deal with the jealousy.
That's also an important point too. It's like processing how. It's like anything. Think about it like a business plan. You have to prepare for things you may not expect.
Yeah.
And if you already expect jealousy, then why not prepare for it? So you have to be able to sit down and talk with your partner like, hey, how are we going to deal with things like jealousy? That's important. How are you going to deal with things like inflections? You have to be able to have a plan in place. And maybe that shouldn't have been a 6 key point, but you have to plan ahead. Hey, if an inflection come up, how are we gonna deal with it? Yeah. And you script it. You script it word for word. You make sure you write down so everybody understand that, hey, this is what we're doing. We have a code.
This is our guide. Yeah.
We have a code yellow. This is what we're doing. Or we have a code red. This is how we deal with it. You have to have that framework in place because it's gonna come up. Jealousy doesn't go away just because you're in an open relationship. It gets worse. It gets worse. So you have to be able to deal with it. You have to be able to manage it, and the only way you can manage it is if you're managing yourself, really.
I think this last, that second example that you gave reminded me of this. Well, it was, I don't know how online you are, but there was this podcast, a bunch of Caribbean people who live in the U.S. Some of them are FET influencers, party influencers, and so on. I don't know if you saw it. And they started out in an open relationship, I think, but they have very different definitions of open relationships. So the woman in the relationship, I guess, was thinking it would be occasional now and again. The guy, the floodgates had been opened for him, and he was up high in the double digits, and she was really concerned about that, and it seemed as if they did what they needed to do to come and talk about it and rein it in, clarify things well. So I think that's also important. So if people are in an open relationship, what does that mean? Does that mean occasional whatever, if you meet somebody that you really connect with once a month? I mean, and I don't, you don't necessarily have to put times on it, but if one person thinks open relationship means you have 2 other sexual relationships per year, and the other partner in their mind, oh no, it means 100, then you're creating some issues. So it's important to be even clear, I think, on that level. Or what do you think about that?
Okay, a very interesting point. I think most of it leads back to communication, in the sense where if we're going into an open relationship, we have to be communicate about what our wants are.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be on the
and like what you're trying to get out of the open relationship.
Yes.
Okay.
You have to be on the same page with your partner. No, it's also highly important to understand that an open relationship, it means different things for everybody around. You have to make sure that what you think is an open relationship. So it's not like open relationship and then this is set in stone what you do to be considered an open relationship.
And everybody who is in an open relationship has the same kind of,
It's not. Open relationships are based on what your relationship is. It's by your
definition,
design. How do you want this to look?
And when you say you mean the couple.
Yes, the
not
couple.
you, an individual in the relationship. The couple.
Yes, the couple.
Yeah.
It's what it looks to the couple. What do you guys want this to be? Because my partner and I version of open relationships may be completely different to what another couple might see it as. No, it doesn't mean that we won't interact. It doesn't mean that we won't interact. But we might interact in different spaces that aligns with both of our styles.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, I'm in an open relationship and this is what we all do. No. No.
You don't
it's more so,
all meet on Fridays.
It's more so, hey, me and my partner is in a relationship and this is what we do. How do you feel about it? It's more what fits us, not necessarily what fits, like, other people around. No. You gotta understand that the distinction between like your primary partners and your secondary partner, that's highly important, because once you add more than one, especially coming from an already monogamous relationship moving into an open relationship, obviously like territorial behavior takes effect. Like it takes effect. The primary partner is always gonna feel like hey, they need more from you, in the sense of, for instance, a relationship could be in such a way where I'm not sharing emotional experiences because I don't want to take emotions away from, I just want my emotions to be for my primary partner. Whereas my primary partner wants emotions everywhere because that's how she loves. So you have to be able to communicate about that different styles, and how we choose to integrate with that is that I'm not losing anything if she wants to spread her love. My family's just getting bigger. Because if it's a friend to her, it's a friend to me. Yeah. Just by nature of sociability and hey, this is my partner. So most of the time, anybody that comes to here is gonna have to get assessed by both parties, not just one. Just one. It has to be assessed by both parties. So that's highly important in communicating, like understanding what your individual desires are, and then bringing them together to communicate and create what your version of open relationships are that best fits your relationship.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So I'm curious about like the general or typical response you get when people learn about your open relationship. Living in here especially, but I mean, I know even in bigger spaces people still have, you know, some resistance to,
in a sense, but because we're geographically isolated from just a lot, in a sense, because at the end of the day, I think it's a beautiful place, but we gotta remember we live on a piece of rock in the middle of the ocean. And there's just certain like consequences that comes with that. No. Open relationships. Could you ask me a question again?
What has been the general or typical response when people learn about your open relationship? Learn that you're in an open relationship. Okay. Learn that you have an open relationship.
Kind of had a sidebar in my mind there. No, the typical response that we generally get is, first of all, shock. Like what? like a sense of a shock and amusement. Earlier I said that we would have probably had more interaction with people if we just had act like we're cheating. In the sense, if I exhibited behaviors to that person that, hey, that I may be doing this behind my partner back, but realistically I'm not, like, the partner knows who you are, it seems to have gone a lot easier. Our interactions with people
more acceptable.
Yeah, because think about it, it's already, a culture of cheating already exists here. That's just the natural. I mean, it was instilled growing up here on this island, how like people usually do things. So it was easier to meet people in that space. Now, when we started meeting people in the spaces that were a little bit more ethical, like we decided, hey, we're not gonna be unethical just because somebody can't understand something. We're gonna tell you what it is, and if you flow with it, you flow with it. If you don't and you're scared, then that's okay too. We still will love you, no problem. We just, you know. So we started to communicate with people, like, hey, you will still get usually get two responses. They either they don't respond or you don't see them again.
They just disappear.
They're just like, you know, you guys are some other stuff, I don't understand it, bye bye. So we had a lot of instances where we just get like cold shoulders, like just like ghost, like bye bye. That's it, just like bye bye. And then we learn to understand that, hey, if every time we try something, every time we try this approach, like, we get lost, we lost people. If we're doing the same thing, then we must be the crazy people. So we started changing it a bit. It was less of a this, I guess, big discussion in a sense for you to, for instance, we used to want to tell people what it is, and we leave it to more so to be that, hey, I'm not gonna lie to you and tell you what, I'm gonna tell you exactly where I'm at. If you want to come in here and party with that experience, then come in here and party with that experience. And realize that when we was just like upfront and honest with people, we were able to quickly like deselect the ones that don't want to be there and work with the ones that actually want to be a part of our interaction. And it became a lot easier when we would able to just, we were in control, well, we're still in control about who we allow into our lives based on their reaction to it. If they're accepting, then come. If they're not accepting, then we still respect them, we still love them. Maybe you don't understand yet, maybe we need to give you a book so you could educate yourself and then come back and see me in a little bit. You know. So it's not about like just cutting off people. It's also about like educating people. Like, hey, this might be new for you, and your reaction, obviously, is to curl up in your shell and hide away. But understand that if you ever want to talk about it, we're here to talk about it. And then sometimes we'll have times where we see that relationship come out the shell and then move forward with the relationship. All the time the shell just closes up and then that person disappears.
It's like a little crab.
Yeah.
Okay.
So being here on this island and operating in a non-monogamous space, it is hard. Just being here and just remember what the culture is on the island. Wrong relationships and sexual behavior, it's hard. It's not easy doing it on the island. In a bigger geographical location with a bigger population, it's easier because the information is it's more practice. But being on this island, it's hard. It's super hard. Like, you wouldn't believe how hard it is just to have sex with somebody on this island.
I mean, I can imagine. I feel like for people in monogamous relationships, even that, you know, can be difficult if you are talking about, or if you're bringing in or thinking about things like religion, or for people who are single and trying to date, or people who are single and having sex casually, so they're not even like in a relationship with anybody, they're just trying to live life how they feel like. It's also difficult for them. I think we just kind of have, and not just monogamy in mind, but like legal monogamy, like marriage is prioritized, preferred, do anything you want. Well, usually except open relationships, you know, in marriage. So everybody who is not that, who does not have like the typical, the standard, or the ideal or traditional married relationship, is kind of like, all of us suffering. So I can imagine.
I think that's a very good
That's
point
big.
you brought up too about single people. They call it singledom.
Yeah.
in in Angmanaga space, but it's also a very empowering place for somebody to be, especially women, especially young women in today's world. Young males, it's a very empowering place to be in a single. I mean, culture might tell you need to find a mate and you need to have a boyfriend or a boyfriend, and that might be the social pressure that you have. But people need to understand, if they just spend a little bit more time in singledom, whether at the start of like your sexual experience, being a teenager, moving into adulthood, or coming out of relationship. I think if people spend so much time being in single and just meeting people casually, talking to people, you may not even have to have, but just expanding your relationship experience, I think people would be like better off. I think a lot more people should use singledom as like an empowering, like especially for, you know, how a powerful a woman can be when she could choose her own mate at random, like wherever she want. You know, it's kind of empowering for people to have that kind of control over their sexuality and who they choose to share it with, for sure.
And
that's
we
powerful.
should, I think, support and elevate those kinds of stories and those kinds of identities, because like that's where you learn a lot about yourself. You can learn about yourself in relationships, but you learn a lot about
more.
yourself when you have to be with yourself.
Yeah.
When you are dating and you are seeing what's out there, what's not out there. And at some point, like, you know, something I've been playing in my own mind is about how, especially women who, whether they were married or not, most of them have children. Once they get to the point where like their children are old, their wings just spread and they go live life.
Yeah.
And I am curious about how we can start that from younger, how we can ensure that people are living life throughout their lives, you know. So we are at 8:59, so the hour has passed really quickly. Do you have any final words before we wrap tonight's show?
Well, final words would be thank you. It was a really good experience being here. Final words would just be to like educate yourself, man. Just like, I mean, as young people living in 2024, where relationships are constantly changing and the world around us is constantly changing, like, educate yourself. Like, self-knowledge is powerful.
Yep. I will just finger snap that. And of course, thank you so much for agreeing to be here and have this conversation with me. I hope all of you listening learned something. I'm sure you did, because I also learned a lot. I appreciate, you know, being in this space to convene folks who can have these kinds of conversations and bringing it to you all in a very public, very open kind of way, you know, removing the veil from a lot of these topics, or the shroud from a lot of these topics, to no, these ain't night topics, these are anytime topics. And I want you to ensure that like you are also thinking about, and when you move through the rest of this week, you know, you are talking to your partner or partners about whatever it is. It might not be open relationships, it could be open relationships. You could just have a conversation about open relationships, even if it's not something that you might necessarily move to. And you can also, if you have been thinking about an open relationship, use this as the catalyst. So you can send the link. Remember, the links are always available after the show, so you could send it to your partner or whoever and be like, hey, can we listen to this together? Or I listened to this and they said some really interesting things and I want to talk to you about it. Is that okay? Remember, we are taking the advice of the guest and we're asking, is that okay for us to have?
I give consent.
For us to have this conversation. As usual, I want to remind you that Pleasure Pulse is a safe, inclusive space for everyone, where no question or topic is too big or too small. I am really glad that you joined me this evening for this conversation, and I will see you all next Tuesday. Have a pleasurable evening. Bye.